What's up, Barbarians? I've been playing in the PTR, and I've been playing since beta testing, and I have a list of how the Barbarian could be better. This is not an extensive list, and there is much more to go over, but this is where I thought I would start. I put this up on the PTR feedback, and if you like this, please give this post a heart, or share this video with other content creators so we can try to make Barbarian better. And if you have other suggestions, please write them in the comments of the video, or put them on this Barbarian post that I have here on the Blizzard forum. These thoughts are my own and from reading other posts on the forum that I thought had great ideas. I started with 4 categories, which is skills, key passives, glyphs, and Paragon nodes. For skills, Iron Skin needs to have a barrier that is from your max health pool instead of your missing life. Also, we need to be able to have Iron Skin when we aren't injured. Just like you can pop Challenging Shout whenever you want, the same should be for Iron Skin. Then an idea for Whirlwind, I think Violent Whirlwind, it should bump its damage up. So Channeling Whirlwind for 3 seconds increases its damage by 35% while dual wielding. And I said dual wielding because, maybe it's just me, but I love D3 with the Bokathos swords, and dual wielding, it just felt better. Just my opinion. For Rend, I think Enhanced Rend needs to make enemies vulnerable. Instead of extending the duration of vulnerable, why not it just give vulnerable in the first place? Change for Upheaval. Enhance Upheaval, I think the stun chance should be increased to 65. And for Violent Upheaval, I feel that it should have to damage one enemy to grant Berserking for 3 seconds, but also make it like Sundered Ground and have Upheaval overpowers every 10 seconds. It doesn't get a damage increase, it just overpowers. But also Sundered Ground would change to something else that I have yet to write. Aspects I've yet to get into. Then we have Frenzy. Frenzy, I think Frenzy's cool, and I think it just gets glazed over. I want Frenzy to be a standalone skill. For Enhanced Frenzy, we should have a 2% damage increase per stack of Frenzy. So as a baseline, this is going to be 6%, and if you get the Battle Trance, this will be a 10% damage increase. That I think is a good start, and we do need changes to Battle Trance as well. And for Battle Frenzy, when you have maximum Frenzy stacks, it should grant Berserking. When you think of the Frenzy skill, you think of, in my opinion, someone going crazy with like 2 swords. And wouldn't that mean that you should be Berserking as well? I think it should be. Deathblow, in my opinion, desperately needs a change. This was my own thought on Deathblow, and let me know what you guys think about it. But when I think of Deathblow, I think of literally a one-shot. And how do you make Deathblow be a one-shot without being it overpowered? So here are my thoughts on that. You can only use 2-handed weapons, and the damage increase is from 140 to 250, and it deals 200% increased damage to bosses. That's the enhanced, but now it just goes on the base skill. Enhanced Deathblow is hitting one enemy grants Berserking for 3 seconds. My thoughts on Warrior's Deathblow and Fighter's Deathblow I thought would make it kind of unique. Warrior's Deathblow, dealing 200% increase over power damage while using a 2-handed mace, but you can't use the 3rd blade. And for Fighter's Deathblow, dealing 500% bleed damage while using a slashing weapon, and you also cannot use the 3rd blade. It really kind of fits into the narrative of a one-shot, but the 3rd blade will not let you be able to spam it, so it will always have a cooldown, and you have to figure out a way to use it against the cooldown. And which also means you can't use the Ring of Starless Skies for the core skills, and you can't use the Banished Lord's Talisman to proc your Fury and to get ranks to core skill. So it makes it more of a skill that you have to try to build into instead of just making it a core skill and ramping its damage up like crazy. I think this would be an interesting change. I don't know if it would work until we actually tried it. What are your thoughts on Deathblow? Then we have the Iron Maelstrom, and I think it needs a damage buff. So the 2-handed mace damage would be up to 100%, 2-handed slashing would be 30% and 130 bleed damage, and the dual wield increased to 50%, and the rank 5 cap needs to at least be doubled. This way, we can make Iron Maelstrom viable. For the key passives, Unbridled Rage just needs a damage increase up to 70%. Unconstrained should also have a damage increase up to 75%. And the Walking Arsenal should go from 15, I think, to 18%. And I still have that low because that is an easy one to proc. You can proc that pretty much at will. Unconstrained, you could say, is also easy to proc. Same with Unbridled Rage, but with Walking Arsenal, you could even do a basic skill build and still get this bonus. And with it being a 54% damage increase, that's pretty good. And then a rework to Gushing Wounds. Hitting an already bleeding enemy with a bleeding skill increases the bleed amount by 100% of your damage over time damage, or your bleeding damage. Overpowering a bleeding enemy increases the bleed amount by 100% of your vulnerable damage. Rupture is no longer guaranteed overpower. And I thought this change would be interesting. One, because the overpower of Gushing Wounds doesn't really do much. And if Rupture is a guaranteed overpower, then Rupture would easily be the best bleed skill, hands down. But this way, it'll make you want to make your character stack into bleeding damage instead of just flat damage, which I'm going to go into with my other PTR video about how flay damage is actually best increased through stacking flat damage instead of bleeding damage or anything else. But that's for another video. And then overpowering a bleeding enemy also gives you the second bonus. So this makes bleeds technically an overpower, and it'll still be a low chance unless you have other aspects that make you overpower, or if you take the Bonebreaker board. But this way, it's still a 3% chance, it's still low, and it's still powerful. Then we have the Glyphs. I think a lot of the Glyphs could really be a lot better. For example, the Blood Feeder Glyph, it increases damage to bleeding enemies. An enemy has to already be bleeding in order for Blood Feeder to even proc. And if you're going to keep it this way, that's fine, but increase the legendary bonus to deal damage to bleeding targets. That way, you could really use it very well with the Fields of Crimson. Right now, I don't know anyone who uses Blood Feeder because it's just not very good. And if you don't want it to scale with the Fields of Crimson with damage to bleeding enemies, you could just put damage over time over it, like the Disembowel Glyph. What I say for the Disembowel Glyph, instead of the legendary bonus being an increase to damage, why not increase damage over time? That to me only makes more sense, because then it makes you build your character out in a different way, and it makes all those tempers now useful. The Cleave Glyph, the additional bonus gives you 12% increase to critical strike chance. But if we look at an axe, it actually has the stat of damage over time. Because of that, the additional bonus for Cleave should be while wielding an axe, you deal 10% increased bleeding damage. That way it kind of synergizes a little bit better. And with the Ire Glyph, the additional bonus should be 10% reduced damage while berserking instead of just damage to elites. And the legendary bonus should be increased damage while berserking. The Might Glyph. The Might Glyph was one of my favorite glyphs that I no longer use because the legendary bonus on it sucks. The legendary bonus should be just increased damage instead of damage to healthy enemies. We have no way to scale that except for Slaying Strike, which is decent, but it's only 1/3 of the fight. After that, it's useless. So increase it to just straight damage or damage to healthy and injured, just like the Weapon Master node. Mortal Draw. I think this is a really cool idea for a glyph, and it's kind of useless because of why other glyphs are useless. It doesn't synergize very well. I would love to use Mortal Draw with my Iron Maelstrom build. The additional bonus should be after swapping weapons 5 times, your next skill will overpower. Doesn't matter if it's a basic skill, doesn't matter what it is, it just overpowers. And the legendary bonus should increase damage while swapping weapons. That way it kind of plays into it. This would make Iron Maelstrom a really fun build and really powerful. Seething, another glyph that I think most people don't use. Additional bonus should be while wielding a sword, you deal 15% increased critical strike damage. On your swords, it gives you critical strike damage, just like axes give you damage over time, and maces give you overpower damage. And if you look at the Crusher glyph, what does that give you? Extra bonus damage to overpower. Seething, Cleaver, they should all do the same thing. And Territorial, the legendary bonus should change to increase damage to close. I think Territorial is actually a great glyph because it gives damage reduction, and if it could give an increased damage to close damage like multiplicative, that would be really cool. Legendary Paragon nodes. I think Blood Rage needs to go back to how it was before. Killing a bleeding enemy has now a 15 instead of 10% chance to grant berserking, and your damage is increased by 10% of your damage while berserking bonus, up to a max of 50 instead of 45, if it needs to be capped. I have another idea of how it couldn't be capped. The Carnage board needs some love. While berserking, your attack speed and damage is increased by 15%, instead of just attack speed at 16, And Decimator, it needs to get the change that we have in Season 8, Season 7, needs to go back to how it was. Making an enemy vulnerable increases your damage 20% for 5 seconds, and overpowering invulnerable damage grants an additional 20% damage increase for 5 seconds. I thought it was great. I don't like how they changed it, and I think if they change it back, that would be great. Force of Nature. I have an interesting thought on Dust Devils and Earthquakes. I personally don't like playing with them, and I'd rather have Barbarian do direct damage instead of Earthquakes and Dust Devils. But if we're going to have them, then that's fine, and I think this would be a pretty cool change. Let me know what you guys think of this one. Earthquakes cause Dust Devils. No longer 75% chance, they just cause them. Earthquakes and Dust Devil damage is increased by 20% of your damage versus close bonus, up to a max of 150%, which is similar to what we had before. Your Blood Rage and Hemorrhage Paragon nodes are nullified. If you were to take, in theory, Force of Nature, Blood Rage with Hemorrhage, and with my changes to Carnage, that's a lot of increased damage, and that might be too much. So with the Force of Nature, you're either going to scale Earthquakes and Dust Devils and nothing else, or you're not going to take this board and you're going to play a more direct damage build. This way I feel, instead of taking Force of Nature because Earthquakes are so powerful and then you want to try to do damage outside of that, you kind of pick and choose. So you could play Earthquake and Dust build and Dust Devil build, or you could play direct damage. It'll kind of give you like a more build variety. Because we all know with Force of Nature and with the Heavy Hitter, that does so much damage. But this way, if you can cap it if you can cap other things that make it sort of like you either take either or, maybe that would make it work better. Tell me what you guys think on the Force of Nature change that I'm suggesting. And then the Hemorrhage board. I think it also needs to go back to how it was before. Your bleeding damage is increased by 15% of your vulnerable damage, up to a max of 60%. And I do think the Hemorrhage board needs a minor bump over the Blood Rage, as damage over time is already weak, and we don't know if these new Heraldic gems are here to stay. If they are, then this would need to be tweaked for the Tyrant Bane gem. If not, I think this is good. This is by no means an extensive list. This is just the start. There are still uniques that need to change, like the Battle Trance. That is the top one that needs to change. Mythics, Shattered Vow needs to be better for all damage over time builds. Hellhammer needs an increase to either the burning damage. And how cool would it be if you could use the Disembowel Glyph, which would now stack damage over time, and it increased the burning damage on the Hellhammer, so you could actually use the Hellhammer in Torment 4. I think that's a cool idea. What do you guys think of the changes that I have proposed? Do you like some of them, half of them? Do you think they suck? Let me know. Write a comment on the forum under my post. Write a comment on the video. If we could even get a quarter of these changes into the game, I think Barbarian would be in a better spot. That is the start of how I think Barbarian needs a change. Let me know your thoughts. Comment below. Alright guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.